What's up, Squadron? Aviation has given me a ton of amazing experiences. And more importantly, it's introduced me to a whole new family of friends. Join us tonight because we're cleared direct for some hangar flying. I'm Ryan Dembroski, and this is SuperAero Live. What is up, SuperAero Squadron? It's Wednesday, which means it's time for another episode of SuperAero Live. I hope you're well. I hope you're good. I hope you're well and good. Just excited to have you all here. As you know, guys, everyone asked me, one person asked me, what's the biggest thing I can do to help the show? Because they like the show. The number one thing you can do is share the show to everybody. And then after that, it's liking, subscribing, commenting in the chat. I see the chat. We'll talk about the chat in a second. You guys are awesome. I'm really excited to have you back. Also, there's Patreon. And for the Patreon supporters, I won't show you patches tonight. I will just tell you that I found out today the hats are in. I've never made a hat before. I didn't know it was going to be so much work. But I'm pretty happy about it. Make sure you go if you haven't seen it. Oh, the other thing. We had a contest at the end of the episode last week. For the book, The Final Mission, and of course I left it upstairs and showed it as a prop. Sarah and Annie, congratulations on the books. I think Sarah's already got her book, Sarah from Wisconsin, and then also Annie, yours is international, so it's going to take like 3 months to get to you. But you got a book coming, and it's super cool. So check out that episode with Final Mission, and then also, guys, set your calendar right now for next week. Kind of a cool, I'm really excited about this show. It's the guys from Dark Arrow, which is a new home-built company. They haven't even flown yet, but they're out of Madison, Wisconsin. The whole thing's made out of carbon fiber. It's gonna, I don't know. We'll see. You guys can ask a lot of questions. I know we got some home builders in the chat that are going to be really interested in that. I'm just interested because I went to college, the same school as them, and I got some Badger pride. So I want to get to the chat in a second, but first, I got to introduce my guest tonight. You guys, hopefully you watched he does a weekly live stream too, every Tuesday, and half the reason I made this one Wednesdays is so I wouldn't conflict with it, so I could watch his. Everybody, welcome to the show, Mr. Eric Farewell. How's it going, buddy?
Howdy. I feel like my video quality is so much worse than yours, and on Tuesdays it's really, really good. So I'm at home. You got me in my home office because I don't know where everyone else in the world is that's watching this right now. And many, many thanks to Zachary, Paramotor Crazy, Bender, Reese, Sarah, Zach. I mean, there's just so many great people in the chat.
He's already jumping. You can tell that you do a live show too. You're like, who's in the chat?
To it. I appreciate these people, but I just feel bad for them if they're East Coasters like me, and it's almost 10 p.m. So
well, I will tell you that I'm scrolling through right now. We have a couple of you. We have one viewer that comes in every once in a while from New Zealand, which is crazy.
That's awesome.
And we also have, I don't see her tonight. Dutchy Girl shows up sometimes. It's like 3 a.m. when she watches. So
wow.
So yeah, man. I hear you. And thank you for joining us on a late night. I'm gonna add a couple names to the list. Just Plain Silly, our friend, YouTube channel, hilarious YouTube channel here. Hey, what's up, buddy? Bob Smith is here. Marty is here. I also made him a moderator, so don't be a jerk in the chat. He'll just ban you, I guess. Nice to see some of your folks coming in, some Paramotor folks. Zach Sherman, buddy, how's the training going? I hope really well. It's Bender's here. Sarah Clucky's here. Hey, Sarah, good to see you. Nick Moore's here, photographer. Nick, you should go down to Florida and shoot some photos with Eric. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Please.
My brother Ben is here. Ben Dembroski, so I had an interview today with EA. He had an interview on the television today because he's a BMOC at a college where he teaches. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really excited to get started. And yeah, if you have questions, obviously put them in the chat. We're going to talk about Paramotors tonight.
Or some kind of flying. Because we have a saying at Aviator. It's hashtag fly all the things. I am a private pilot. I've been flying since I was 3 years old, and to me, basically anything that goes up in the sky makes your life better, makes the world a better place, and you gotta fly, guys. You gotta fly. I'm telling you, you just made my face bigger, and now I see how bright the light is. I'm about to turn that down and turn some background lights on to make the ISO better, but No, I think that what you're doing here is such an important thing, Ryan. You're bringing the aviation community together, and you're trying to just highlight the great people. I'm truly honored to be on here because, for me, I'm still that 14-year-old kid walking into the air show performers hangar going, wow, this is what I want to do someday. And I finally had that opportunity. So thank you so much for having me.
Dude, I'm so excited to have you. You and I... oh, I messed up my thing. Keep talking. There we go. There it is. All right, you're back.
I got more light. I
was clicking on stuff too.
It was killing me.
we both were hitting buttons at the same time. So you and I met almost a year ago, and I gotta admit that who thumbs down the chat? Who thumbs down? Get out of here, thumbs down. All right. You and I met like almost a year ago now at Osh 19, but I had been a big fan of your YouTube channel is great. It's got a lot of great Paramotor content.
Thanks, man.
And actually, I found you because I was trying to come up with a name for my YouTube channel, and I was like, oh, I'm sure no one has Aviator, bloop, bloop, bloop. And there it was. And so
annoying fact about that, by the way. So 9.5 years ago, I started the YouTube channel. And there was a kid, so I have youtube.com/aviator, right? But if you go to youtube.com/user/aviator, it goes to some guy who has one video. And YouTube gave me the subdomain, but they wouldn't give me the username. So I'm still Aviate-TQR, which is my license plate since I was 16 years old, because a Q on a license plate looks like an O.
Yeah.
So for those of you guys who want a cool license plate, you can't get them in Florida because I have them all. But yeah, I'm still slightly peeved about that. And then I tried to get Aviator Gaming when I was doing gaming stuff, and that guy was like, "No, I won't sell it to you, but I'll buy yours." And I was like, "I have like 10 times the subscribers you have," and now he has 10 times the subscribers I have. So I don't know. These things happen.
It's just how this stuff works. It's why I was talking to folks today. They're like, "Okay, but like your SuperAero on YouTube, AERO." A lot of people type in arrow like, bow and arrow, and then but your SuperAero flight and everything else, like what's up with that? I was like, because SuperAero and everything else was taken, but I like it's just how the naming stuff goes. So here, I thought we could do is I have the night we met. I have a video from that, and in case I was gonna play that just so people could see. Like, I'm sure most people it looks like your wife's even here in the chat.
My wife's in the chat. The kids are asleep. It's good. This is good news.
It's a miracle. My kid literally went to bed like 5 minutes ago. This is the night. In case you don't know what a paramotor is, which is possible, especially if you're like more into the GA side of aviation. Let's play this real quick. You can see the night that Eric and I met, and then we can talk about what it is. But for tonight, it's just like, let's check out the air show.
Yeah, this one was like slow flight. The injuries that you guys do as part of the full series. Make sure no one's on my ribbon.
So there you go. That was the night we met, which was amazing. And that, do you want to tell folks like what that for folks listening to this when I finally get around to launching the podcast version? You heard a lot of like paramotor noise.
It's more like it's like a lawnmower on steroids, and they're like, "What the heck was that? That didn't sound like a Rolls-Royce Merlin. It didn't sound like a light coming at 540. I have no idea what's happening right now."
So what describe what that was, because it was also kind of a special night. I know you guys have an air show team, I guess is what I'm beating around the bush.
Yeah, we do. So we were very, very blessed, and there's a video on YouTube called Road to Airventure. It's also available on Amazon Prime, and we were very blessed to be able to introduce the air show community to paramotors themselves. The paramotor is a fan you put on your back. You have a paraglider behind you. You run forward and literally run into the sky. It's as close to Wilbur and Orville Wright as you can get, and we were so honored to be able to introduce this to the airshow community in July of 2016 at Oshkosh Airventure, the largest air show in the world. And for me, it was, getting married, having kids, Oshkosh, right? It was one of the most ultimate things I've ever done in my life, and I've been very blessed that I don't really have a bucket list. I kind of checked those items off before I hit 30. This is one of the things that really was a monumental moment, and I love flying. I love flight, and I've been part of the airshow family since I was 14 years old. So being able to transport my love for flight and share it with the world, share it with kids on the sidelines looking at this. And I'll never forget, there was a moment when I asked the entire audience at Oshkosh, I was announcing, and I asked the entire audience, said, stand up and look to the left and watch as these young men run into the sky. And I watched 500,000 people stand up, turn left.
That's amazing.
And like, that was cool. And then all of a sudden, we're getting close to the end. We're like 8 minutes, 20 seconds in, because everything is timed extremely carefully. We practice this down to the point where it's within a 6 to 10 second moment. It's very important to us to make sure that we meet the time slots that we have. And I tell everyone, I said, turn your eyes high to the sky and watch as Manu Tejero does the infinite tumble. One of 4 men in the world who did this at the time. 2 of them were his brothers, who would do an infinite tumble where he's tumbling end over end. And I watched the whole crowd go, and I still get goosebumps, like right now, getting goosebumps thinking about that moment, because, for so many people, flying is one of 2 things. It's either getting into a big giant tube that someone's flying you to and eating your Biscoff cookies and maybe having a beverage or 2, or it's getting into your airplane, which, I love airplanes. I've been around airplanes my whole life. I like I said to you prior, I am a private pilot. I've been flying forever. I have an RV6, a Cessna 120, and a Kit Fox that's almost finished. But
that's what's weird about that is it's still not enough airplanes, right?
No. My wife tells me I am not allowed to buy any more kitchen appliances because I love those. Before I buy another kitchen appliance, I have to buy another airplane. So we're budgeting. Yeah, I have yeah, no, seriously. I love cooking.
Mine's the other way around.
I grew up in a family of chefs, so like I have 3 sous vide machines. I have the everything. I want an air fryer, all right? And she says I can't have an air fryer. I need another airplane first. So I'm very, very blessed with an amazing woman. And the last 4 months of hiding from COVID in our home with our 3 kids has actually made everything better and stronger and better than I could have imagined. And now I have to buy another airplane. So pray for me.
I guess I will. A couple of comments came in about I don't know. I have just the one. Gary Smith, after watching that video about the night air show, says he loves all the lights. I think that's part of the magic. Good showmanship.
That's actually one of the cool things. So if you watch The Road to Airventure, which is a documentary made by Brendan Grant, who's a phenomenal filmmaker, it talks about the fact that we wanted to add lights and smoke, and we wanted to add all these different things as we continued forward. But at that point, it was all a dream. And we had a sponsor that year. We didn't have a sponsor in any of the following years. So we're the only non-sponsored airshow team to ever sponsor another airshow pilot. So like we pulled money out of our own pocket to sponsor a pilot who was coming from Italy and couldn't budget for it for Sun and Fun one year. So we've got Paradigm all over Luca Batursio's glider. And it was fun. But we've slowly been developing and reinvesting and trying to create something that's even more spectacular. And this year was supposed to be the year that we flew Oshkosh with the most incredible pyrotechnics on Paramotor trikes doing aerobatics. And we had these cool ideas of how we could interact with the actual fireworks show, not with like the air show, but with the fireworks show. And we have the systems. It's just time and money, and without a sponsor, it's all my money, and I don't have that much money because I have to buy another airplane so I can buy a freaking air fryer. It's an important thing.
I feel like that's a complicated yet okay problem to have that you have there, my friend.
It works out. I can't complain. I'm very blessed. With COVID happening, our business took a massive hit, and we're thankful for the fact that like signups have started building up again. I think people are watching a lot of YouTube right now, and they're kind of getting excited. But a lot of people don't want to travel. So we're doing a class in Virginia, August 1st. Cool. We're doing a class in Pennsylvania, August 22nd. The August class the Virginia class has space available in it still. 2 years ago, we had a 3-year wait list. And obviously people fall off the wait list, but right now we have classes available, and that's our full-time gig. Our full-time job is let me see if I can move so you can see this way. Everything's reversed. So we have a company called Aviator, Paramotor, and we teach people how to fly. We change lives through flight. And so that's how we afford to have the Paradigm team. That's how we do everything we do. And right now we have classes available as soon as, I think the soonest one is July 25th at our second location, X35.
That's like, I mean, because I want to, okay, I was going to say that's remarkable. And also a bummer. Thanks COVID. Because literally, like, there was a moment after the next video I'm going to show about us hanging out, where I was like, I gotta do this, and I was telling my wife about it, and she's like, well, like, when's the soonest you can do it? And I was like, oh, like 2 years.
Yeah.
And she's like, good. We need the time, but.
No. Now is the time.
Now's the time. Yeah.
You are not full time anymore. If nothing else, just link up with us. So I shared with you before the show, we're traveling all over the country. So we go from here to Virginia, to Pennsylvania, to Oregon, down to Nevada. We're going through Oregon to go check out some cool ranches and stuff that we're looking at setting up some flight parks. And then we're dropping into Salt Lake to hang out with the Flying Cowboys. We're going out to Reno to hang out with Trent Palmer, doing some flying there. Down to Texas and Colorado. Like, we're going all over. So just come along with us, and I'll teach you to fly while we're going. And mind you, we have a film crew coming, so you can create content on your own. We can have content for you. Like,
yeah, I mean, I'll just I don't know if my wife's watching. Kristen, that's what we're doing now.
There you go, Kristen. It's a plan. You guys are gonna have to buy an air fryer and an RV. All right.
We already have
air fryer, RV.
We already have an air fryer, so we got that part taken care of. Speaking of air fryers, Just Plain Silly says air fryers rule. I'm getting one installed in the Cirrus. And then my brother, I want to get him. He says, so my brother's into sailboats. And I think in sailing and in boats, there's the same rule that we have in airplanes, which is N+1 is the correct amount of airplanes.
Yes.
So okay, let's. I just noticed Just Plain Silly says the air fryer actually comes standard, or the espresso machine comes standard in the Cirrus. So, all right. So I want to show people. So, I saw your air show. And then we hung out the next day. We did an interview, and I'll put the link to the video after this. You guys can check it out, or you go search for. I think it's called like kiting a paramotor paragliding wing is hard. And this is what I was talking about. So you were generous enough to lend. I think he's now the director of your second school, right? Andrew.
Andrew was. He stepped down just to be able to have more family time, but he's still working at our second school. Andrew's incredible. One of the best instructors, 20-year Marine. I guess he was not technically a Marine aviator. He's a Marine crew chief on an F-35 and the Harrier program before that. Wonderful guy. This is the gunnery sergeant that you don't want to mess with. He's one of the people who I truly believe in the most, and you got to hang out with him for a day, and so I'm really glad you had that opportunity.
So he took me out to this random farm field near Oshkosh, an undisclosed
beautiful spot,
undisclosed location, and obviously, like in a day, like this, paramotoring is it's a thing you need to learn. Like, you gotta, like, actually, like, learn. You need instruction. You gotta learn how to do it. There's no way in a day he was gonna teach me everything I needed to know to get up in the air. But you said, you know what, Ryan, what would be great is if you just tried kiting, you'd get a really good sense of, one, if it's for you, and two, what it could potentially be like. So let me show people how that went. This was after, like, an hour of sweating a lot.
And it's just slowly inflate this time. We don't have to be aggressive at all. Good. Move right, release, big brakes. Back up, move left, pull left, right hand up. Nope, up towards the pulley. There you go, move, there it is. Hands up a little bit closer to the pulley here. Up here? Nope, in like here. That. Move right, pull right. Good, pull that right. Now release it, back up, big brakes. Don't let that glider overshoot you. Move left, right hand up. Big brakes, back pocket. Good job. Good work.
That's cool.
Nice job.
So that was like after like, I don't know, like 45 minutes, and it was like just starting to click, and then it's like, oh, like we have to go back to the air show. But I show that not to say that it actually seemed like that moment that I think it looks like I'm working there, and I was also like 30 pounds heavier than I am now. But like,
congratulations.
Thanks.
You did the opposite COVID-15. I love it.
Yeah. Well, and half the reason is I was like, oh, like I was listening to you talk about like weight loads for wings and stuff. I was like, I gotta like drop, gotta get to. But could you just describe to people a little bit about like what, you know, I don't want to accidentally give people the impression that this is like super hard based on that struggling. That was after like 20 minutes. Like what?
You said an hour before. Don't give yourself too much credit. Come on now.
Yeah, maybe an hour. Like that was like the peak of my performance, but after like just an hour in the field or something, right? So what can people expect when they come down by you and learn how to, like, what's the actual experience like? Because I just got that tiny taste.
Yeah, so it really depends on where you go. There, like my instruction, my experience. So I came into flying Paramotors with about 1,200 hours of fixed wing experience. I was a test pilot. I was flying a lot of experimental and ultralight airplanes for their first test flights. I had actually gotten into aviation at a very early age. I was born 100 yards from a runway, so I was sucked into it. My grandfather was a World War II pilot. My grandmother was a stewardess on Eastern. My uncle flew for United. My mom soloed on her 16th birthday. Like this is the family thing. All my cousins fly except for my only female cousin, first cousin, and it was a flight attendant as well. So like this is part of the family tradition. I came into it and I anticipated it being easy for me. I had always done well with aviation. Aviation was kind of my safe place. I was a homeschooled 6'4", 135-pound kid, you know, and aviation was where I felt at home. It was where my ADD went away. It's where everything felt at peace with the world. Even though I was having to work hard, I was having to understand what was happening. It was really if not the only space, almost the only space where I felt like life was right. Like this is what I was meant for. And so when I went to paramotor training, I anticipated that it would just be another checkbox. And I made the mistake of going to paramotor training at a school that was at the time it was okay, but it was nothing like what I'd experienced in general aviation. And so when I finally developed Aviator, the whole goal was to create something that was much more focused on like professionalism, having a really clear-cut set schedule, creating a system that would actually do a good job of teaching people in a building block approach so they weren't overwhelmed like I was, because I was so overwhelmed by it. Not just the physicality, which was insane. I lost 22 pounds my first year flying. I didn't weigh 135 at that point. You know, but I struggled. I struggled so hard after 8 days of doing what you were doing in that field, kiting, very little ground instruction, very little understanding what was going to happen. I finally soloed and it kicked my butt. After 2 flights, my instructor said, "Hey, you're good to go. You'll figure it out. Sign me off." You know, and the same line was basically used through every step of the training, which was so not what I was used to with general aviation. Right. Was, you know, okay, weather. Well, we're inside this broken down T hangar right now that's falling apart around us. It's raining. This is not the weather you want to fly in. You'll figure it out. Airspace. Well, what airspace can I fly in? Well, you'll figure it out. And over time, this became the repetitive kind of expectation that was made for me. And I was like, this is not okay. Like, I'm a test pilot. I'm a guy who I want to understand everything that's going to happen before it happens, because I'm going to plan for low speed taxi, high speed taxi, you know, ground effect flight, climbing out, getting up to altitude, testing slow flight and stalls. I'm going to do everything. I almost got in a fist fight, right? Because I asked him if I'm going to go up and do stalls. He's like, "You stall this thing." And I'm like, wait. I'm not. Like, he picked me up by my shirt, and I was like, This is not the training experience that I want. And so when Aviator came about and the idea of creating a school, it was, okay, how do we change the standard? And for us, it was creating a very systemized, controlled area where you come into class and every student comes in the same way. You don't get to start on Monday. You don't get to start on Tuesday. You start on Saturday morning, 9 a.m. You show up. You're going to spend 2 hours in introductions. Get to know the instructors, your teammates, your wing buddies, your wingmen. You get to know what your challenges are personally. You get to know what their challenges are personally. And then we dive into a very clearly controlled building block approach. And it is extremely exhausting. The best way I've heard our training described is boot camp meets summer camp meets AA with more booze. So,
that, I mean, I was very tired at the end of my hour. So yes, sure, that makes sense to me.
It is work, but the thing about it is that it's so unbelievably rewarding when you get the experience of running into the sky. Like if you think about any of your flying dreams, and many people have had flying dreams, right? Have you ever had a flying dream, Ryan?
I mean, yeah. I mean, and so I don't want to spoil it, but like when I have flying dreams, I think you and I talked about this last year, actually, right? Like I was saying, like there's two things that I have a flying dream. One is like it feels like I'm in that kids movie Planes. There's like an opening scene where he's like flying around without any care or whatever. It's like that, or I'm just like a head in the air, right? And that's
right.
Like that, I think, is what you're hinting at. Like that's what it feels like.
That's what
to me.
this is.
Yeah.
It's literally the idea of walking out your back door. You walk out the back door of your home, you lay out a glider, you strap on a motor, and moments later, you literally run into the sky. And the sense of freedom, like there's a guy in the chat right now, Reese, and Reese is our new videographer. He just went through training last week. So he and his wife are wonderful people, and they just went through training. And he's a private pilot. He's a scuba diver. He's a skydiver. He's like, I've never experienced, and he was actually on our show last night. So if you go to youtube.com/aviator, you know, that link that Ryan wanted, you can see him on there talking about this. You're welcome. I love you. You know, it really is a remarkably different experience. It's a more intimate experience of flight. And I think that's the crucial difference, is that the intimacy of flight. Like I fly my RV6. Right now, I'm flying my RV6 more than I'm flying Paramotors because I'm back and forth between the schools. I was in Jacksonville on Saturday. Like I'm all over the state or all over the Southeast. But if you lined up all the airplanes of the world, my ex-business partner, who's a dear friend of mine, Travis Burns, he's a Coast Guard pilot for 20 years. He says it perfectly, and I'll quote him. You line up all the airplanes in the world, and you give me a paramotor. The only airplane that might tempt my fate to say I'd rather fly this is like an F-22 or an F-35. And it's mainly because they're not available on the open market. Right?
Right.
Anything else, like the paramotor, it is my choice. And like I'm building a bush plane because I want to be able to take my paramotor into the bush to go fly in new locations. And like I've said this from the stage at air shows, you know, the most incredible feeling in the world is not flying into First Flight Airport in your Cessna 172. It's getting out at Kitty Hawk, pulling your paramotor out of the back seat, and running down the dunes that Wilbur and Orville did to take flight. Like, what an experience.
So I gotta add that to my bucket list now.
I'm doing it. I've never done it. I've talked about it on in front of millions of people, and I've never done it. And I'm doing it this month. And I'm so excited. I've never been to Kitty Hawk. I am so excited about this. Like my whole family, we're going up north. I'm like, yes.
That's awesome. I'm gonna break it. So people have some questions that I think might. First of all, the chat always wants to know when my glasses are gonna steam up, guys. It was about 34 minutes this time. The glasses steamed up. So whoever won the pool this week, good job. So okay. So it's definitely like the experience. I will say this from my experience with it and what I've described. People asked me a lot, and actually a lot of people. So I had two really epic experiences at Oshkosh last year. One was hanging with you guys for a day, and then the other one was getting jet blasted in the face by an F-35 as it was in the hot section of with all the guys with guns and everything, and more people were jealous of getting to kite and getting to experience that than like getting sandblasted by the jet. And I think the one, I don't, this is going to sound kind of weird. The way I'm describing it is going to sound a little weird. But, like, there was that moment in that video, right, where the wing comes over my head. And someone in the chat mentioned that the winds were getting gnarly. They could tell in the video the winds were gnarly. The winds were gnarly, and that's why we stopped. Because before that, Andrew's like, I think I might be able to, like, get you to the point, like, you're making progress, so I might be able to get you, like, airborne by pushing you for a second, and, like, so you
which
can
is my favorite thing to do whenever I have a new student, which I'm not on the field teaching anymore full time, but anytime I have the opportunity, my wife learned to fly Paramotors in November of last year, and the very first time that I get the opportunity to get behind her or behind anyone and push them into the sky, and your hands in the small of their back, and you feel them just going out of reach. And they get that feeling of flight, especially if you can do it in the first, 10 minutes. It is magic. And, like, my entire staff, I'm so blessed. The team that we have, most of them, about half of them are retired. We have SpaceX launch directors. We have prior Air Force aviators. We have all sorts of people, right? And they all live for that. It's not for the money. I can guarantee you that. My prior business made a lot more money. But the fact is that what you can do with it, like that feeling of being able to help someone experience flight for the first time and you feel their body in your hand and you feel them go weightless. And it's just like, wow. And it never gets old. I mean, I've done this for 8 years. It does not get old.
So for me, the closest I got to that was that moment with the wings overhead. And I was like, I could kind of like feel it in my hips, right? You could feel like, oh, like this thing could take me into the sky. And it just sounds a little like, oh yeah, I felt it in my hips, feeling it in my bones. It was for me as a total ab initio student, it was equal parts exhilarating and terrifying, right? Because I don't know yet, right? It's no different than your first intro flight in a Piper Cub when you're trying to land it for the first time or whatever, right? You've got that like, you don't know what you don't know yet thing, but also like exhilarating. A couple questions that popped up I thought might be good to ask you as we keep talking about this. Gary Smith asks, do you track hours in a logbook for paramotor flying, or is it just like regular flying?
So there's multiple answers to this. So a very good friend of mine, Melissa Burns, she's an airshow pilot. She was a member of the Unlimited Aerobatic team for the USA. She's also a paraglider, a base jumper, a paramotor pilot, all this stuff, and she logs all of her time. She feels like any time in the sky is something you should log. According to the FAA, ultralight time does not apply towards your licenses, but she logs the time because she already has all the licenses she needs, and she wants to log the time because it is part of her time in the sky. The other option to that is that you could take your paramotor and you could in-number it as an experimental powered parachute. So you need a light sport license at a minimum and a powered parachute rating in order to fly it. However, that's pretty easy to get. And for instance, before the FAA clarified after 20 years, actually almost 40 years, they finally clarified that wheel launch paramotor tandems were legal this past year or a year and a half ago. We actually went through the process of having a two-place in-numbered paramotor built. And it was a big struggle and a big challenge, and it's for sale. If anyone wants it, I will take a loss on it. I'll take a wash on it because I never ended up having to use it, because as soon as as we got it in-house and we started going through the process of getting our powered parachute rating, the FAA changed their mind and they wrote that, hey, wheel launch is fine. So we don't need it anymore. But the cool thing is it helps you circumnavigate. Like FAR 103 is incredible, which is the ultralight regulation. It's incredibly open to interpretation and open to a clear understanding of the fact that its entire purpose is to keep people on the ground and other people in the sky safe. The FAA doesn't really care too much about whether or not you're safe for yourself. They just care about making sure that everyone else around you is safe. And so the challenge with that is some of the things they do, like we can't fly at night. Right. You can't fly over populated areas or any area that has congestion or open air assemblies of people. But if you have a licensed Part 91 LSA, like the one that I have in my hangar right now, I could put lights on it. I can fly over downtown. I can fly at night. I can do all sorts of different things that you couldn't do with an ultralight. So that's the best way to log time. I have a friend in California who actually built his paramotor. He bought a paramotor and he assembled it and he made a builder's log and he showed it to a DAR or DER and was able to have it certified as an N-numbered aircraft. And he then proceeded to log time for his ATP and then moved from his paramotor to a King Air 350. There were a few stops in between, but he's flying commercially now in a King Air. So it can be done, but I think it's very important to understand that what you're doing is certainly not the standard, and you certainly need to have the rest of the experiences that are required. I would, as a fixed wing pilot, I live humbly, my friends. Please, there's no room for hope in aviation, and we must live humbly. So you just kind of pre-answered a question that I personally wanted to ask you. So Marty, the guy in the chat, he and I have been talking about this a long time about getting paramotors, keeping them in the hangar with our Cessna 172 that we co-own with a couple other guys and gals, and then just having access to it at our Class Delta airport, right? And not totally knowing, like, one of the things the challenges were like, well, like, we're reading Part 103, we could maybe call the tower and hang out over the airfield, but it's surrounded by a city. So if we're reading Part 103, right, we can't actually leave safely. Right. So there's obviously room for interpretation, and there's a lot of case law about ultralights, particularly from the 1980s and the boom of ultralights. The best way to look at it is be gracious, be courteous, and don't put flying out of Class Delta Airport. We've done it many times. I've personally done it many times. No issue. You call the tower. I had a 1946 Piper Cub that the radios didn't work on, and I would call the tower when I was 10 miles out, and I'd be like, hey, I'm inbound. Is it cool if I land? And they're like, yeah, we'll light gun you in. No issue. Right. Same exact idea, right? And then the same airport, same day, I was judging a UAV contest for Lakeland Linder at their high school there, and same airport, same day, different controller. I called him as I warmed up the airplane. I'm like, hey, I'd like to depart the grass runway. And he goes, well, where's your radio? I said, well, it's not working. And he says, well, get it fixed. And I was like, I would rather fly home because my radio doesn't work. He eventually acquiesced, but like, you are at their mercy. I mean, you're talking to the controlling agency, and you're doing so with great courtesy. And quite frankly, whether it's a Piper Cub or a Paramotor, you're doing something out of the norm. And so it's something to keep in mind for sure. But as far as progressing over a congested area, the challenge with congested area is that it's very, very vague as to what it actually is.
Yes. This is where we were headed with it was. Sorry to interrupt, but that's where we were headed. Was like, there's a whole extra hour-long podcast about the definition of that, right? Like,
it could be hours. It could be more than hours. I mean, you can look through court records for the different ways they depicted it. I mean, an open-air assembly of persons per the courts has been determined as 2 or more people. You can fly over 1. You can't fly over 2.
So do we qualify right now on this COVID? This is a COVID assembly.
This is a COVID open air assembly, right? So, I mean, that's something we have to keep in mind, right? Like, if we are, again, like our first rule at our school is be courteous. It's listed a little more crassly. It's DBAD. Don't be a something. But it's because there's so many pilots who take their freedom so liberally that they actually end up hurting the sport because they're like, I'm right. We're like, no, be courteous first. Like, aviation is a privilege. And for us, like, whatever you're flying, like I say, I fly everything. I have a T-shirt that says Aviator, #fly all the things. And my birthday this year, I flew my airplane, I flew my paramotor, and I flew drones. And it was like the best day ever. Like, that's what I want. So the back end of this is to say there are certainly ways that you can get around this law. Like, if you wanted to fly, let's say, for instance, my town is a very small town. We're a town of 18,000 people. Downtown, we have a lake, and around this lake is a park. and I have launched from the soccer fields at that park, which is legal. And there's nothing in the city that says anything about it. It says, there's no city law that says you can't have a motorized vehicle in that park. And so I take off, and I then fly up, and I have to cross over one house's yard, then follow a road to the orange groves, follow the orange groves across, and now I'm flying what looks like over downtown. But what I'm actually flying over is a walking path and a railroad track, which are side by side, and there's no people, so there's no open air assembly. There's no issue. We had an instance where some pilots were flying what looked like over downtown during the Mardi Gras parade, and they were violating. They're flying over people. Where I flew over no people. I flew over no congestion. I flew over a railroad track. Right? And so that's the key there is that you have to be able to prove it. So you use a GPS tracker app and you use a GoPro camera. I mentioned Travis earlier in the call. He had an instance where he was flying over I-95 or beside I-95 in Miami, and someone called the police saying that there was a man flying a bed sheet carrying a rocket launcher. So, of course, the authorities met him at the park where he was flying from. He showed that he did not have a rocket launcher. He showed his track where he'd flown. He never flew over the interstate. He was at 500 feet. He was not in any way causing an incursion or any issues. FAR 103 is a wonderful gift to us as pilots, whether you're a GA or ultralight pilot getting into paramotoring. But you certainly need to understand it, and that's something that we take really seriously at our schools.
So is the rocket launcher, though, is that like just he didn't have it because it was like he didn't pay for that optional upgrade, or?
So far, I've not been able to find one. I've been talking to Elon Musk trying to get this happening.
Maybe
he
flamethrower.
The flamethrower. We need a rocket launcher. I genuinely was like, and Travis is, he's not a huge dude, so it wasn't like his leg was the rocket launcher or something. We don't know what happened with that, but very interesting. Although the backside of this is was of benefit. Is that if you are a pilot, and he was an ATP pilot flying for the Coast Guard, you need to submit, if requested, because oftentimes law enforcement doesn't understand. And I had a conversation this morning with law enforcement who were asking, because I've become friends with all the Central Florida people because we're known as the people who do paramotoring. And they had an instance where a pilot had flown over some private property low, and the owners were like, what's going on? Law enforcement may not know what to do, and the FAA may not know what to do. So if you do have a pilot's license and you start flying ultralights and you are requested, even though you aren't required to have a pilot's license for flying ultralights, if you have a pilot's license and you're requested to submit that pilot's license and show it to the law enforcement officer, you are required to do so. Mm-hmm. So that was the learning experience we gained from Travis's experience, was that he was like, well, I don't need a pilot's license. He's like, well, but do you have one? He said, yes. Well, you have to submit it. So make sure you show it to law enforcement if they ask for it. Little things you learn along the way.
We're gonna put that in the helpful tips. Eric and Ryan's helpful tips.
Dun, dun, dun.
So Gary Smith said we need people to spread out more than 6 feet, maybe 20 feet, that we can fly over them. Because that's very funny. So I got a question for you from Instagram, and this is probably what everyone's wondering. Well, there's two questions I have to ask you still before we kind of start to wrap up for the night, which I can't believe that.
It's been fast, man.
It's been super fast. Well, let me ask you my brother's, because he's my brother, so he gets priority. He's a boat guy, and he was like, okay, like paramotor seems perfect. Bring it on the boat. Get to a beach. Go paramotor on the beach. I was like, yeah, man. Like, here are these videos. Check these videos out. He was wondering though. He's like, this is how insane the Dembroskis are. He's like, all right, what if I how big of a boat do I need so that I can like get an autopilot for the boat, set it into the wind, and then I can take off my boat and then land on it again while I like do an ocean crossing. And I was like, one, you're insane, but two, that's a really interesting question.
I love it. So Oshkosh 2014 or 13, I was there on the behalf of Flying Magazine. I'm a photographer, video maker, etc. And so I was working with Flying Magazine at the time, and they asked me to cover the event. And so we made some really cool videos with the BD5, the B-17, like all kinds of cool videos. And they do an event every year for their advertisers and the publishers. And it's this beautiful villa on the lake, and it's just amazing. Great food, great people. And I was introduced to the editor-in-chief of Yachting Magazine, which is a sister publication, logically, right?
Mm-hmm. I feel like this is going to be a good story. I like the way this is going. Continue.
I need to follow up with them. I've been wanting to do this. That we have talked about it off and on now for years, about going to the Mediterranean and taking a super yacht and using it as an aircraft carrier. So this needs to happen, not in COVID times, but it's something that I'd like to do. This is totally doable. If you guys look up Tucker's one of my prior students. He's like a brother to me. He's got over 1 million subscribers here on YouTube, and just is a genuinely good human being. Check out his videos. He did a boat to air refueling. Really cool stuff. And it is certainly possible. You would definitely want a launch area without obstruction, so no metal guardrail, of probably 30 feet, give or take, to be safe. Maybe less if you have the ability to keep 8 miles an hour to 10 miles an hour of wind. I can take off in one step. If I can get the wing overhead and have 8 to 10 miles an hour of wind, you can take off in 1 or 2 steps. So it really depends upon your skill, and it depends upon your space available. So totally
that's not a beginner move. That's not like day one of aviator training. It's like, here's the yacht.
Right. No, it's like when we're looking for a new location, when we moved to a school to X-35 in Denellen, Florida, and as we looked at other locations across the U.S. to open schools, we're looking for at least 600 feet in all directions with no obstacles. You want 600 feet for a beginner pilot with no obstacles ahead to keep them safe. And that's the mission. That's the goal. As you become more and more experienced, there's a video on my channel from long ago. I can't remember the title of it, but my brother and I, who's sadly since passed on in a car accident, he and I went with a few friends and a few fellow students or prior students of ours, and we went to a sandbar off the Bay of Tampa. And at this time, the sandbar was not wide enough for me, the lines of the wing, to be taut. So we put the wing on the bar. I stepped into the water. It was very windy. So my brother's holding on to me. And I inflate the wing, step back onto the sandbar, turn around, take off, and fly around. It was a blast. It was probably the highest wind I've ever flown, but it's extremely laminar off the ocean, which is just great. It was 29 mile an hour, gusting 29 mile an hour. So, it was one of those situations where generally we're looking for winds under 10, particularly for beginners. But this was flying a very fast wing and landing on top of the boats and having a lot of fun. And I have extremely fond memories of my brother holding me like a teddy bear, trying to keep me from getting dragged off the sandbar into the other side. So it's doable if you have the experience. So
that sounds awesome. A quick follow-up before I get to the real question that people want us to ask. My brother says, does a mast count? I think a mast would count. You don't want that. That'd be hard if it's in the middle of the boat to get around it with the wing.
It's doable. So
you're like, no, do it, man.
No, do it. So I'm gonna put a name in the chat, and this is a difficult name to spell. I'm gonna ask Derek Trout or Ripman Ryden or somebody else who's in the chat to find the link for me. But there's a gentleman by the name of Jean-Baptiste Chanlier, and he is a French paraglider pilot. And Jean-Baptiste is one of the most talented filmmaker teams. Like, his team is incredible. There's a video he has. I'm trying to recall the name. It's not Touch. It's the one before. Light Line, I believe, is the name of the video, where he lands on top of a church steeple. And it is truly beautiful, beautifully made. And it showcases, and mind you, he doesn't have a motor. He's using the wind. Right.
He's just using
right. So he's using lift off of a cliff, and it is absolutely stunning. So check out those videos just for some pure inspiration, understanding what you can do once you master this, because It is hard. Like we talked about earlier in this podcast, it is a difficult challenge to learn. You have to push yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, but it is so worthy. And that's why Ryan has to do it.
I desperately want to. It looks like my brother and I are going to come down. He says, sign me up.
All right, Ben.
So
my best memories with my brother, actually both of my brothers are flying, and my best memories with my father. I taught him to fly 6 years ago. My dad's now a tandem instructor. He flies all the time. He has well over, I would estimate he has at least 1,500 hours of flight time in 6 years, and he flies every opportunity he gets. And the shift it's made in him, and just like aviation makes a shift in all of us, the shift it's made in my dad has been incredible. You know, the difference in him is beautiful. So fly as a family, my friends.
Some of my favorite episodes of your show are when your dad's on, because he reminds me of my dad.
Awesome, man.
So here's the other one. This is like the $1 million question. And then we're gonna do that. We maybe take a couple more questions. I got a game for us to play, like a lightning round game real quick if you're up for it. And then we'll sign off because it's late by you, and you're doing me a solid by being here.
Hey, I'm becoming a night owl again. I'm not going to fly in the morning now, thanks to you, which is
oh man.
I'm just kidding. I don't fly in the mornings anymore. Somebody asked in the chat earlier if I still teach full time. I don't teach full time. I think we're up to 15 or 16 instructors at Aviator now, and I'm so blessed because I gave up 6.5 years of my life of seeing my kids sometimes not for 4 or 5 days at a time because I leave before they woke up and get back after they went to bed. And so I'm so blessed to have the most incredible team of people that support our students now. So I am still involved heavily. I still, like today was meetings all day, but I don't teach full time. I just get to help out when I show up and get to watch the students smile.
That's awesome. Here's the $1 million question. Here's the $1 million question was H Diesel 308 from Instagram says operational expenses ? Yeah, it's a Google away, but I think it was just apologize. I did an Instagram story asking people what they wanted me to ask you. There's something else that I think someone from your staff sent as a joke, which I can't say in polite company.
I can't imagine who would say anything impolite to you in private. I can't imagine who that might have been.
I don't know who that was. But so let's talk about operational expenses. What can people expect?
Yeah, this is the part that makes it really interesting. I bought 2.5 years ago. I bought a 1947 Cessna 120. I paid $9,000. This was not quite a barn find. It was in annual. I sent a IA to go have it inspected. The IA failed to check the compression. Oops. Based upon fair market value of the work that was done, not counting friendships and all that stuff, I would have well over $35,000 in that $9,000 airplane 2 years later. Mm-hmm. Hangar rent, annuals, ADSB, paint, everything else, right? So buy a $9,000 airplane, spend 26 plus to make it safe, to make it proper, because 2 of the cylinders were reading 0 compression.
That's not, for those of you who aren't airplane people, that's super bad.
That's super bad. And I flew it home from Florida like that because it still flew great.
That's
videos are on my
lucky.
YouTube channel. Yes. I literally, when I got the report back from my IA, I almost cried because we crossed the Houston Harbor at 200 feet to stay VFR, and I don't like being low over water ever, but we're like crossing the Houston Harbor going boat to boat, and we got blessed with this airplane that was running beautifully but had no compression in 2 cylinders. It was running. It started easier than any C85 you've ever seen in your life. By the way, it's for sale, so if anybody wants it, it's in really good condition now. But that's the cost of owning an airplane is so high. I mean, my insurance on that airplane, and it's a $30,000 airplane, is $786 a year, if I recall correctly, somewhere in that $700-800 range. My RB6 insurance is $50 more for $20,000 or $30,000 more in coverage. So the costs are so high for fixed wing. It makes it prohibitive for people, particularly for kids. We had a 16-year-old in our last class, and we generally don't teach under 18 because of Florida law. But it's foreseeable for him. It's a doable thing for him to buy this as a high school student who works with his dad as a contractor after school, right? So a paramotor, if you go in, let's say you go whole hog, you go nuts. You want to buy every single accessory. You want to buy the most expensive paramotor, most expensive wing. You're going to spend $15,000, $16,000. If you add a trike to that, you add every possible thing you could. The most I've ever seen a student spend is $21,000 for themselves. That's a lot of money. That's
sure.
a really decent Harley, right?
That's actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because that's why I tell people about flying clubs, because I'm like, well, getting into the flying club, my plane was cheaper than the neighbor's Harley. Living in Milwaukee, I got to talk about Harleys. But anyway, continue.
You have to. So if you do it on the cheaper side, the average student with us spends $11,000 to $12,000 in their equipment. That's all the stuff you need to fly for brand new gear. If you buy used gear and it's quality gear, like say it comes from our school, you'll spend 10 to 20% less. If you buy gear that you're shaking the dice and throwing them and hoping it works out well, you can get into the sport for less than $5,000. As far as operating costs, you are looking at spending around $8 to $9 an hour for actual operating costs, and that includes maintenance. For general maintenance, that's for your 50-hour kit, your 100-hour kit. That's the general maintenance. The crankcases are good generally for about 500 hours is what the manufacturer recommends. We've seen them last much longer. The top ends are good for about 250 hours. So you will spend a little bit more as the motor gets older, but people don't realize you're only usually flying for, if you're insane like me and wanted to fly as much as you possibly could, you might fly, I don't know. I mean, Derek Trout's a perfect example. Derek's been flying since, I believe, November. He lives in Pennsylvania, flew in the cold. Derek's in the chat right now, and he could talk about how many hours he's flown since November, flying like crazy, coming back to Florida for his wife's training. The average pilot might fly 100 hours a year. Right. So most of them fly less. I got a lot more hours than that because I happen to live in one of the best places to fly in the country. So my first year I flew over 500, but I had a job that allowed me to work whatever hours I wanted to work, and a wife who was extremely forgiving. So Derek says he's flown 65 hours. So yeah, I mean, if you look at this, guys, you're looking at a motor that burns an Atom 80, which is the smaller motor. If you weigh under 200 pounds, we'll probably put you on that. Like 185 or less is our goal there. Is you're going to burn 2 liters of fuel an hour. That's less than half a gallon an hour. It's just ridiculously affordable. It really is. I call this the gateway drug to general aviation, because once you get into this, you're addicted. Like 3 of our employees right now, or 2 employees, 1 intern, who are paramotor pilots. One of them came to us as a student and is now leading our school in Lake Wales. The other one came to us as an employee to help work in our warehouse and became a paramotor pilot. A third one is a paramotor pilot who's interning to become an instructor. Those 3 are going through private pilot training now because they are so addicted to flight. They want every avenue of it, and that's the beauty of this. It's like, it's not one or the other. It's all of it.
Well, and I just want to put that in perspective, what you said, for people who maybe don't have as much aviation experience or watching this. Like, I have the flying club I'm in, the aircraft cost, the share of the aircraft, I share it with 14 other people, which means you can't always fly it when you want to, even though we're pretty good about it. So I paid $3,000 for the share. So that's on the low end. It's flipped though. So for me, and this is like, I think the best deal in general aviation, it's $100 some odd a month and then $65 an hour. So
that's amazing.
It's incredible.
Smoking.
Yeah, super, super low. But think about, my brain always does is, and I granted to Wisconsin, the winters would be hard. I'd have to wear like a snowsuit or something. But like, think about flipping that, right? So now it's like, well, I maybe have a bigger investment in gear, but basically flying is comparably free. That's what I tell my wife anyway, right? Like, if I got a paramotor, like, I have to pay for the thing, but after that, it's like, I just won't go get Starbucks.
Right.
Or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, the actual, like, operating cost is so low that you can amortize the cost of the equipment out more easily than you can with an airplane.
My RV's annual this year, the inspection we did this year was, if I didn't have an A&P full-time on staff, which we do, we have an A&P and CFI full-time on staff because we want to have someone who's really educated and understanding of engines in general, plus he's a past student and a dear friend. He told me, like, if I took it to his shop at like a cheap shop rate, it would have been over $5,000, just for an annual. And it wasn't like it was bad. It was just like, oh, this needs new rivets. This needs a patch. This needs that. Like, airplanes are expensive. Like, they just are.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Okay, so that's where it's at. I want to play a game with you. Do you have a second to play a game before we sign off tonight?
Brother, we've done 4-hour shows. I'm good for another 3 hours. Let's go.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I'm good for another 3 hours.
Find yourself another beer. You're going to be good to go.
I am almost done with my beer.
I'm almost done with my water. Water
you're
is
so responsible.
It's a gin and tonic. I can't lie.
Okay, so there's one other. Well, let's play the game. Okay, so this game's called Short Final, and I have just a handful of random aviation questions. Sometimes, guys, last week we did, like, if you guys didn't see last week's episode, we did Hal Bryan and Chris Henry from EA. We did like their World War II buffs, and we did like a aircraft identification quiz that actually took like another 30 minutes because they wanted to see all the crazy airplanes I found.
I'm really concerned. I'm not gonna lie right now, and like I'm being a bad guest because I'm talking over you, but I'm literally nervous right now about what topic you're gonna pick, because I've been sitting down with my employees and talking to them about like preparing for the written, and I'm like, hey guys, like, I can use a VOR in real life.
No, we're not going to talk about that.
In a written.
No, it's not. There's no points. I'm just going to ask you a bunch of random questions, and you're just going to tell me the first thing that springs to your mind. I originally was like, oh, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a bunch of images of paramotor wings, and I'm going to like quiz you on the models, but it just became too difficult for me to pull that together.
And you want to make it interesting for your average viewer. I get it.
Right,
I get
right.
it. Like,
so
most people don't care about butt fans that much. All right.
Well, no, we're going to talk about butt fans. And then we're going to finish probably with the question that we'll finish with a heartfelt question. All right. So here we go.
Right.
So I'm going to put on the cheesy music. Everyone, Derek's schooling everybody in the chat.
Dude, Derek's on fire, man. He's on fire.
Thanks, Derek. All right, time for Short Final, everybody. Here we go. Get some dramatic music. All right, Eric Farewell, Short Final. Tail wheel or nose wheel airplanes?
Tail wheel always.
Always. Okay, airplanes should be what color?
Blue, red, or blue.
Red or blue. Okay. Best place in the world to fly paramotors?
Czech Republic or Costa Rica.
Worst place?
Ooh, anywhere windy. Or high altitude.
Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Favorite civilian aircraft?
Favorite civilian aircraft, P-51 or actually really the Twin 51. Come on, the 82 is amazing.
That is cool. Okay. Favorite passenger you've ever had in an airplane or on a paramotor?
Without a doubt, my wife, although I'm taking my kids soon.
Oh, there you go. Favorite in-flight snack?
In-flight snack, beef jerky.
Beef jerky, there you go. Highest altitude you've ever flown, and maybe you got to break that into two.
Paramotors, 11,200 feet. Airplanes, like 16,430, I think. I flew a Cessna 150 Aerobat back from San Francisco Bay Area, California to Florida in 3 days. That sucked, but it was awesome. Awesome trip. It's also on my YouTube channel.
So you, I think, beat me by like 300 feet in fixed wing. I have an episode of it for this channel I'm working on. We had oxygen. It was fun. Got a little hypoxic. I think.
I feel like we need like 3 more minutes of those. Those are fun.
Yeah. Well, I did. That's all I prepared. Is just these. But we could do more. Throw some stuff in the chat, folks. So I have one last question. There's 2 things we got to talk about before we sign off, and then it's getting late, so we got to do this. One is you have a book. Do you want to plug your book real quick, because we didn't talk about that at all, and it just seems like something I should do as the host.
Yeah, so I sat down with a publisher about 2.5 years ago, and by sat down I mean I sat on the phone while I walked around a shipping container outside of my shop at the airport, and I was introduced to this publisher by a mentor of mine, and they said, "Hey, you have a really good story. You should share it." And I don't know about you, Ryan, but like the idea of putting your life in a book is kind of like, come on, I don't deserve that. Like that's not for me.
Oh, see, I'm a narcissist, so I'd be totally down with that.
See, I'm sure that some of my enemies would probably say that I am. I don't feel that way. I feel very self-conscious about anything that I do, so I'm always very cautious and try to know myself as well as I can. But I sat down with the publisher, and he started asking me about my life story, and after about 10 to 15 minutes, he's like, "Wait, you need more than one book." And I was like, "You're a publisher." And he said, "No, you need more than one book." And so the first book, which is the only book I have currently, is called Farewell to Normal. It's available on Amazon. And the concept of the book is the idea that it's sharing some of my life stories, but the purpose of the book is to help encourage people to live beyond their fears and to understand that no matter what your pains are, no matter what your disabilities are, no matter what your social structure or where life is difficult for you, the reality is that if you're willing to take the risk, it's worth it. This business, this Aviator Paramotor business, has been one of the greatest risks of my life. You know, in the book, it talks about it. Like, we ended up on food stamps, which we didn't even ask for. We've been from extreme lows to extreme highs to extreme lows to extreme highs. I mean, COVID was April. Our revenues were devastated. I mean, when I say devastated, I mean like the fact that we were able to make payroll is such a huge blessing because of our savings. And then every piece of this has been a challenge, but it's been a challenge that's been worth it because we're not working for a goal of making me rich or making my employees rich or making anything happen except for making the world a better place by helping people overcome their fears through flight. And if you guys take some time to watch the videos on our channel, Derek Trout's in the chat right now, his wife Leanne, there's a video on there that it's called My Time Is Now. And she learned to fly, and the fears that she overcame to do that are all of our fears. This is not something that someone's broken and had to deal with. We are all broken people. We're all people who have had challenges in life. And the reality is, if we choose to do something more than just exist, we choose to understand ourselves, choose to know ourselves, and choose to believe that what we're doing has merit, then we can change the world. And that sounds cheesy as heck, and I'm sorry, but like that's the only way, dude. That's how the only way I'm able to wake up in the morning is to go, hey, I know that whatever the drama is today, whatever the challenge is today, whatever the issues are, and I'm the first one to say I have made a plethora of mistakes. I have done so many things wrong. I have lost friends. I have made mistakes after mistakes, and some of those people, like, it breaks my heart. But the reality is that I have to continue to try to look in the eyes of these students when they do this. And Ryan, I want you to come fly, man.
Dude, I
really
would love to. Yeah, got to do it.
Like it will shift something in you. And it shifts something in every student. I've told these stories dozens of times, but we watch students who walk in shy, afraid sometimes of a deformity or the reaction to a stroke or something else, something that's wrong with their body, hiding themselves. We watch students walk in who are like you and me, a little bit over the top and obnoxious.
Only a little bit.
Only a little bit. And we watch them walk in the door all big and like, hey, we're excited about life. And they walk out humbled and happy, actually happy, not the happy we put on because it's who we're supposed to be, the happy we truly can be. We watch the kids, the guys who come in with a deformity or a challenge, walk out with their head held high and looking you in the eye for the first time. You know, I just saw this a few weeks ago with a student who has a speech impediment, and his intro was, "Hi, I'm blah blah blah. I'm this old." That's it. The other intros are 30 minutes long, talk about their life story. And by the end, he's shaking your hand with vigor. Like, aviation does this. This is not just what our business does. This is aviation, guys. This is not me like trying to sell something. I don't care if you come to my school, if you go to a different school. I don't care if you go and just learn to fly an airplane or a hot air balloon. Please don't get a dirigible license or rating first, because I really want one. I need to fly the Goodyear blimp someday. Hey, bucket list. I'm adding items to it right now. All right.
The thing that's frustrating is I actually think you'll probably do it.
Hey man, you and me, we can do it. So I believe in aviation. I believe in the power that aviation has to truly shift our perspective of the world. I mean, astronauts call it the overlook effect, where we just have a different understanding of what the world means. So I went on a really long monologue there. Sorry, but anyway, I have a book.
We'll clip that out. We'll clip that out. We'll put it.
I have a book. It's about that stuff, and it's a piece of my heart. It's not perfectly written. The audiobook's coming out soon. The next version of the book will be better. I have to edit it again for the 13th time. But I would love to have people read it. And if you read it and enjoy it, please email me or call me. Like, I'm easily accessible. My email is eric@aviatorppg.com. Leave a review. If you hate it, tell me. I don't mind learning from my mistakes. So, yeah, thanks for mentioning it.
Yeah. And I just say, like, from your reaction to your monologue, it's kind of funny. I was sitting here earlier today getting interviewed by a massive aviation organization with 3 letters in its name.
FAA?
Yeah, the FAA. No, that's just plain silly. That's his thing, is the FAA calls him all the time. And they asked me kind of the same question that you alluded to, is like, what is this given you? Like, being a pilot. And I had this very long monologue that literally feel you could match them up, and they're probably very similar, right?
That's
I think
awesome.
The idea of, like, what it gives us, and I've never heard the phrase, like, the overlook effect before, but I was basically saying the same thing in terms of, like, what it's given me. It's given me amazing friendships and connections to people. And I think there's also this thing that when you share aviation with someone else, it's almost like when you go to a wedding, like, everyone at the wedding is now like family forever, whether you like it or not. You shared that, like, crazy experience together. Like, it feels,
and I think it
feels
bigger
like
than that. Yeah, it's even bigger. There's a form of intimacy that is created through a shared experience, and when it's a shared experience that takes you somewhere superhuman, like, man cannot fly on his own. So what you're doing, whether you're running into the sky or you're climbing into a Piper Warrior or a Cessna 172, you poor nose wheel boy, I'm sorry.
I mean, I did my training in J3s. I know what I'm missing.
I'm just messing with you. Come fly my planes, man, anytime.
All right.
I'm going to go on a quick segue. I have been so blessed in my life to have grown up on an airstrip that lots of older men offered me their airplanes when I was 15, 16, 17 years old, that, like, I let people just borrow my planes. I'm like, if you have renter's insurance and you're capable of flying it, go. And it's like my J3, which I sadly lost a year and a half ago. I had to trade it for the hangar I'm in now. It logged like 100-something hours, and I put 3 of them on it that year.
Oh, man.
So, and I received no payment. Like, they put gas in it, and they buy me a bottle of whiskey occasionally. But, like, I love seeing people fly. Anyway, the superhuman thing, when you accomplish something superhuman, it's the same idea as going through a traumatic event. You know, you see people who go through a bank robbery and suddenly become best friends, or go through a car accident, right?
Sure.
It's the same endorphins in your brain are firing. And that's why our classes become so close. That's why there's so many people in this chat right now who've been through an aviator experience. They have done something, and they're part of our family. And it's not like it sounds cheesy as hell, because so many companies try to be like, oh, you're part of the family. Dude, it just kind of is. It's not aligned with us. It just kind of is. There are almost, I guess there's probably over 700 members of our family now. And I am about to go on a over 3-month-long road trip with my family, and I don't expect us to sleep not in a student's yard more than a few nights. Like, it's incredible. It's such an honor. And so, I don't know. Aviation's a special thing, and I love that you had the same monologue. That's so cool, man.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a dry eye on the other end of the camera.
Like, well, I failed then.
No, it's great. I agree, man. I think part of what we have, the superhuman idea is really strong. I think that Mike says it's true. Leanne says that she loves you and you're the real deal. I think the idea of confidence, all those things, like when you're even strapped. I mean, I think what you guys do is superhuman. Like, it feels unreal to me, right? That like maybe someday I could do that. Not unreal that I
You're
could.
gonna do it.
I just mean in terms of like that. It's insane that it's even possible, right? And then I think about like when I jump in my 172 and go down to visit my friend a 30-minute flight away to pick up Girl Scout cookies or whatever from her daughter. Like that.
Hang on. Samoas or Thin Mints?
Thin Mints, and I ate a whole sleeve of them on the way back.
Bro, they're both good, but Samoa's out of the freezer. You can't beat. Come on.
No, well, they weren't frozen. They were in the cargo. Well, they weren't in the cargo hold. They were right next to me. But so like that was superhuman to them, right? Like I show up and I'm like, I just flew here. Boy, are my arms tired. Anyway, so yeah, man, I think we're speaking the same language.
The dad jokes are strong tonight, man.
I can't not do it.
I'm with you.
I can't not do it.
I'm with you.
All right, dude, this has been awesome. This has been awesome. I got to let you go to bed. I got to go to bed. We've been on a little bit extra. Everyone in the chat, you guys are awesome. If you're new to the channel, because you came over because of Eric and how amazing he is, stick around and like subscribe and check out some other stuff. Hopefully you can tell we both see the world through somewhat of a similar lens. I think that's fair to say. Hopefully you agree.
Well, let me jump in here really quick because I do know that a lot of my people are here watching right now. I just wanted to encourage you guys because I didn't get to do this. Normally I'm the host, so I do this. I do the introductions. Guys, Ryan's the real deal. Like where his heart is for aviation. I wanted to tell this story earlier, but I didn't get the opportunity. When I got contacted by Sarah Nisler, she said, "Hey, you got to talk to this guy," and I was like, "Okay." And we deal with dozens of interviews at these air shows, right? Because everyone wants to talk to performers. They want to have an interaction. They want to have a video. They want to have something special. And I was like, "Okay, cool." So we met Ryan. Ryan's like, "Hey, I'm going to come tomorrow. Here's the time. Here's what we're going to do." And I was like, "That works totally fine. No problem." And then Ryan didn't leave. He wouldn't leave. He kept talking. He kept wanting to hear more. He kept wanting to understand more. And most of these journalists, they're in and out. They're like, they're there for the story, jump to the next one. And I'm guilty of this. As a journalist, I'm guilty of this also. Like, your schedule's full. But Ryan was so enraptured with aviation, not just with what we're doing, but like he wanted to talk to the Flying Cowboys. He wanted to talk to everybody and understand what their passions were. So I don't say this lightly when I'm like a full-blown, highly recommendation, like, please, anybody who does not follow Ryan right now, support him on Patreon. Support him everywhere. I want a freaking hat, by the way. I will order one right now.
All right, I'll get you a hat.
No, I'm ordering it. Ryan's the man, and his love for aviation and for sharing the personalities of aviation are so real. So, guys, if you're watching and you're one of the people who came from me and you don't follow Ryan, fix that because he's better than me. Go.
Oh, dude, you're making me blush so hard.
Look at your lighting. Your lighting's better.
Well, that's just luck. I gotta tell you, the only reason I hung around is because you guys asked me to. I don't want to say like it wasn't like I like just wouldn't leave. Like
no, he was welcomed. He was welcomed.
It wasn't like I was like, oh hey guys. Yeah, no, I mean, I just think it's there's also like part of that. Just to close the loop on that idea was for me one of the miracles of Oshkosh is that Mike Brennan just subscribed. Thanks, Mike. I just got the email pop up. The idea that like every little niche in that with this big family gathering, there's all the little niche things, and it was getting to like hang out with it was like your family, right? And you guys welcomed me in and said, this is our view of aviation. This is how we do this. This is how we celebrate together. And so that's why I couldn't leave, right? Is because it was like, this is too interesting. It's too different than what I normally experience, right? So that, I mean, you deserve some credit for that too by actually inviting me. So
well, I'm honored, man. And seriously, we've had, you and I have been back and forth for the last 11 and a half months, but this has been fun. I've done a lot of podcasts in my life. Your lightning round was awesome. I might steal it. I hope that's okay.
It's totally fine. It's gotta just say we're gonna do a SuperAero TM. I'm just kidding. You can do whatever you want, man. I stole the whole format of this from you.
I'll put them on the screen.
So, dude, well, thank you so much. Thanks, guys, for being in the chat tonight. This was awesome. I hope you check out Eric's stuff. Check out the book. It's on my Kindle. I haven't read it yet, but I'm excited to. And just check out the channel. I think what he was saying earlier about when you dream about flying, like if you literally go to Eric's channel, click on any video, and there's like an 80% chance it's going to be like your dream that you had the night before about flying.
Hey, we have a new video coming out tomorrow, which has been held back for 4 months almost, 3.5 months, with the engine going onto our Kit Fox. So I'm really excited. It's super beautiful. And then we have another video coming out with our 2 classes that are currently in session next week. It's beautiful. New filmmaker Reese, I think he left the chat, but Reese and Leah are crushing it. So super happy.
That's awesome. Eric, thanks so much. Guys, what another epic night of SuperAero Live. And next week, make sure to come check out Dark Aero. We're going to talk about carbon fiber airplanes that you're going to be able to build in your garage, which is literally the exact opposite of what we talked about tonight. So when I see all you guys are taking Eric's advice and subscribing, that's super cool. Thanks so much. All right, we're going to wrap it up. We'll see you guys next week.